Hi and welcome to a new episode of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Semple.
And we haven't recorded for a while.
I know. Well, I suggested it because I was feeling lonely, Paolo.
Well, to be honest, you did an episode with someone else.
In fact, I have done several podcasts with other people. I'm flighty that way. Totally untrustworthy.
Oh, we are... You're saying this is an open relationship.
Don't be creepy. Don't be creepy, Paolo.
Is that fine? Can I do it with others? if it's fine, all right.
Yeah,
good.
Okay.
Well,
just don't tell me about it afterwards.
Stay tuned, guys. I'm gonna appear on somebody. If any one of you has a podcast, feel free to invite me.
Well, to be fair, it came about because of. I don't think I even went in to Facebook to say it was my birthday. You know, the system told people it was my birthday. Likewise, LinkedIn. So I got all these hellos, and several of the hellos turned into, would you like to be on our podcast? Or doing a recording of something for the European Commission, which was nice, and a paid gig yesterday. So there you go. Facebook isn't completely pointless.
You wanted to talk about friendship anyway. This was a perfect start.
Well, that's true. And trust. And I'm feeling slightly, not just nervous at our open relationship, but nervous at the fact that we're both using the second developer beta of the software that we use, or Apple OS that we use. And I'm not all in, because the iMac I'm keeping on the previous system because I don't want to risk the whole family. But certainly my phone, iPad and watch I've all put onto iOS 15 and the watch equivalent. And, Apple have had complete disasters with betas in the past. Was it OS 7, I think, that everything just went completely wrong. But the last few have been reliable enough. I've done the public betas, and you very kindly made it possible for me to do the developer beta. And I've been finding it really stable. But it's the first time I've podcasted, and it's the first time I've used the Yeti microphone. So fingers crossed.
So people might or might not hear this.
Yes, there'll just be gaps in between you speaking.
It's no. I mean, I have updated first my iPad, then my phone, then my watch to the current development betas, and they're quite reliable. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only thing that broke is Find Friends for me, which doesn't work on any of my devices, whether updated or not. So I think that something must be wrong with
that's weird.
I think something must be wrong with my iCloud account.
Yeah.
But other than that, I find it funny because there is basically this time of the year where all my devices are slightly unstable. and it's like, you shouldn't be doing this. They clearly tell you should only install this on devices that are used for development purposes. But I just can't wait.
I know. And it's funny when things go wrong, when you need them not to, you just have to shrug your shoulders and go, oh, well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the interesting thing is that I can live perfectly well with software not working perfectly.
Yeah.
If just so I can, and honestly, to be fair, I haven't had any significant problem. I mean, in the past, there have been situations where things were not working. I didn't upgrade my Mac because I can't afford, like any of the conferencing apps not work, which especially with these type of upgrades might happen. But no, everything is work. I actually found out that I can use the new portrait mode video.
Ooh.
Even on Zoom. And it's not just a FaceTime thing, it's a camera thing. You can do it on any device.
Well, that's interesting, because I've been hearing sort of weird spatial audio effects from YouTube. So again, it must be the phone itself doing something clever with a conventional stereo signal or something. I don't quite know what's going on there, but
this morning, I guess the phone updated last night. So this morning, I went out for my usual walk and started Audible, and it was this weird sound.
Yeah.
I found out that somehow Audible had gone into spatial sound, and Audible, I'm pretty sure it's mono, because I mean it's just
Yeah.
a guy speaking, right? And I did notice that moving my head, something was happening.
Yeah.
I switched it off because it was just annoying.
But it scared the shit out of me, because I did it when I was awake and nobody else was. And I had my AirPods in watching a video, and I turned my head and the sound stayed with the phone. I thought, shit, I've got the sound up on the phone. Everybody in the house can hear this video that I'm looking at. But they couldn't.
It wasn't.
Not that it was a dodgy video, but I didn't want to wake everybody up at sort of like 5 in the morning.
No, it's all right. But it did. Sure, it wasn't.
Actually, it was a video about Zen Buddhism. So there you go.
Yeah, I was thinking about preferences in watching videos and shows in general. And yesterday it was the football game between England and Germany, and not that I care particularly, but because I live upstairs from a pub, I can hear everything that cheers from the people.
Yeah.
And curiously, so if I'm watching the game on my TV, because I'm streaming, I'm kind of running about a minute behind, I think.
Right.
Which is very good, because I don't have to watch the whole thing, but if I hear the cheering, I just pay attention. But I was watching the game and thinking, how boring is this thing? I mean, I can't understand how people can be watching this. And then I thought, okay, I'll go back watching videos about mathematical problems on YouTube.
Which actually I would also have found much more interesting than football. I made the mistake, because my daughter was into it, of watching the last 20 minutes of the Scotland-England game. And that's 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back. I mean, dear God, and having to put up with inane commentary by Ali McCoist and somebody else, and just, it really was, it's a game of two halves and they're going for goals. It's just unbelievable.
No, I mean, I was actually watching without audio, but what I think is interesting is how,
might have been bearable.
I think what I think is interesting is the fact that we're all attracted by different.
This is true.
Pieces,
this is true.
As much, I think that for the first time, I kind of had something in front of me that I would rather be watching. And I'm thinking, I don't think I can convince anyone to find this thing I'm watching interesting. Any of my friends. Yeah. Now, it's interesting enough for somebody to be making videos about this on YouTube, and
that's a low bar. That's a low bar to get above, isn't it?
Exactly. So this whole long tail in content production it's working pretty well for me. I'm clearly not a head of the tail kind of person, but I find shit in the long tail interesting.
Talking about finding shit, I'm sort of worried about my daughters, really, because the two of them will sit on the sofa watching TikToks, and there's a specific silly snigger that seems to be brought on by watching TikTok. And it's just like watching their precious little brains melt in front of my eyes. It's I just don't get it. It must be my age, Paolo.
Yeah, that we're definitely. I know that this is a show about old farts that most of the time don't remember they already discussed something in a previous episode and talk about it again.
I was about to. Well, that's really funny, because I was thinking about, and I'm sure I did do this, about the spatial audio. And how there was a joke about it being a mistake, that it's because of Tim Cook's southern drawl, that he said he wanted everything to be special, and they misheard him. So they made everything in the WWDC special. But I think I told that the last time, so ignore me, everybody.
Oh, you are spatial anyway.
Yes. Anyway, so that I mean, we sort of nominally had that topic, didn't we, of trusting things, and the bit about friendships and how people still have this thing about online friendships not being real in some sense, and it sort of came up in a couple of the podcasts as well about either in one, with the European Commission about trusting institutions, and to their credit, part of what they were talking about was doing some really interesting work around how they adapt and change to changing expectations. Well, as somebody within the Commission who's trying to bring about change, which is, as we all know, a bit of an uphill struggle for any organisation. But one of the other podcasts was about comms and PR marketing type communications, and the third one was about brand. And all of it was around the same sort of issue, that we're not... But trust is shifting, isn't it? And the way we trust is shifting. We're less inclined to just blindly trust institutions, but we're sort of learning to trust people and individuals, as we've said before, who we've never met before, and it's it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out.
Funny you mentioned about trusting institutions and companies, because I just had a meeting in the afternoon where we were talking about e-commerce sites, and in particular the checking out from an e-commerce website. And I was saying how that is probably the moment I usually pay the most attention. I just want to make sure that I enter my card numbers are correct, my address is right. I mean, if I can, I always use Apple Pay or something else. But sometimes you have to enter data, and you're always very careful, double checking that everything is right. And of course, one of these young punks on the call said, but not all customers are the same. I can see that people on, I don't know what website, that they are just get through the commerce and they just click through. And I realized that the problem is not, how old you are, but is, do you trust the site? And I realized that, for example, I click on, the one-click buy on Amazon all the time. And the reason why I do that is because I trust them. I trust the fact that I don't trust Amazon as the institution, but I trust the fact that if I click on one-click buy, they will get me that product in the right place, charging the right card without making any mistake.
Yep.
So I think that we do grow to trust even institutions such as companies in their own limited domain, if there is a long enough relationship. And I think to some degree this applies to people as well. If you have a long enough relationship and probably long enough experience of sharing little stories and pieces of your life, you can build a relationship with anything,
including a lamppost. But but it's also the context, isn't it? I mean, and I suppose in a way, managing expectations and consequences and things like that. I mean, it's one of the interesting. I mean, I should have looked back, and I should have said this when we were talking about the betas. One of the reasons I lunged into the betas is, and this is why I trust tech pundits less and less, is that the meme going around is that there's nothing significant happened in this set of betas. But actually, I'm loving it. There's lots and lots of little things. I'm getting more fun out of this year's betas than I have out of previous years. And one of the little things that's changed is the ability within Mail to hide my email and just to create a false email address for a particular site. And I can make sure I use the same false email address for the same site, sort of thing. And it's just interesting, me, as I click for things, making, effectively snap judgments about whether I do or don't care about long-term access to my address through that site. I mean, and this is in the context of a story, was it yesterday, that LinkedIn have apparently exposed 92% of their users' data, which is just, oops.
But then again, when you told me about the news item, I guess I was surprised by the fact that I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
It's like, because did I think that they are a reliable, trusted company?
Well, that's part of what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, it's that. I increasingly think of sites like that as throwaway. I mean, that's interesting as well, because, in fact, I've thought of even my blog as sort of throwaway. I don't bother backing it up anymore. So much of life's throwaway.
Oh, don't say that. Look, I think that I don't think that. I mean, that's definitely a case in the sense that it's one axis of to separate things. Is this something I want to keep? Is this something I don't care about? And the popularity of stories on pretty much all social media networks, which is something that honestly I can't bring myself to use, is all based on everything lasts just 24 hours and then it's gone.
Yeah.
I think that there is another thing that I probably is more important to me to distinguish between how I manage my information, which is this going to be public at some point or not?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much thinking that everything I put on social media is essentially a form of publishing.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's a completely public or it's public to a certain group, but it might become public to another group eventually, is probably the most relevant thing to me. So I never post anything on social media today, but I don't think that I ever done it. Like counting on the fact that this is going to be contained in a group, or this is going to be, I mean, if you put it in front of other people, it will eventually become public unless you have some very, very, trusted group.
Well, even then, I mean, one of the groups I was talking to was senior folks, and they were sort of implying that, or they were asking the differences between face-to-face meetings and online communication. And I was saying that one of the upsides for me, I don't think for all of them, of the online communication world is that it's accountable because it's recordable and somebody somewhere will probably have an RSS feed of what you've said or written or whatever. So you better think hard before you open your mouth, which I think is a good thing. But I was making the point as well that even with internal systems, I mean, we saw this at the BBC 20 years ago now when we started doing this stuff, that we're all a copy and paste away from the outside world. So it sort of comes down to that old geek's adage that if you want to be really safe, don't write it on a computer. Which would be a shame. I mean, that was part of why I said the thing about it doesn't matter, in the sense that I don't know what I think 1 minute to the next. As people on this listen to this podcast will know, I tell the same stories over and over again because I've forgotten that I've already told them. Life is just this ongoing window of, half an hour either side that I can be sure of. And so I sort of don't care what I wrote a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. Even if it was, so there was another story, and I'm not suggesting in any sense that I'm anything like this guy, but there was a guy who recently uploaded his DNA to some hereditary, genealogy site, and was charged with a rape, I think nearly 20 years ago. So to completely contradict myself and shoot this story in the foot, it occurred to me that is really interesting, that obviously it's amazing and fantastic that somebody who carries out a heinous crime like that gets held accountable and gets found out. But equally, how do I feel about the state in all its forms having that level of granularity on me? Well, not even the state. I mean, this was a commercial site that the state then got access to, or the police got access to.
Yeah, well, that's a bit odd because essentially it means that the intersection between the database of those wanted for a rape and the database of a commercial company that does DNA analysis are connected, which...
Well, there's that. I don't know how automatic the process was, to be fair. I mean, I should have read the story up before I opened my mouth. But, and I do know, there's television programs here about people being able to find long-lost siblings. They were maybe, what they called foundlings, where the children have been left on a doorstep somewhere. So there's literally no data about them. So DNA is the only way they're going to find any sort of ancestry. And this television program is about that. But they've clearly... Well, and this guy, there was a checkbox on this website that said, do you want this data to be available to law enforcement agencies? And he didn't notice. So
I think that to be honest, one of the main reasons why I've never done one of those analysis, even if the cost has come down significantly, is that I know that whatever company I pick, eventually you're going to lose my shit.
Yeah.
And that is the type of
totally.
information that I don't really want in the public domain because because of profiling implications, because
totally.
At some point somebody, it's a type of information that I'm not sure I want anyone else to have, and I'm happy not to have it as well.
Yeah, I've often said that 2 and 2 makes 5 if you're not careful, and when one of the numbers is already 10, you're in trouble. It's definitely worth thinking about. And even at a much more trivial level, the application that I used for journaling and have done for a long time, since it started, which I think is multiple years anyway, Day One has just been bought up by, is it Automatic they're called, the company that Matt Mullenweg runs, who runs WordPress, yeah. And, listening to podcasters and saying that of all the companies to buy them up, Automatic's probably one of the best ones because they're pretty straight, they do the right thing when they get the chance. But I've got nothing in my journal that anybody's ever going to want to read, never mind make use of, including my family. But it just made me pause for thought, that one of the selling points of Day One has been the rigor that they use to manage the data, and all of a sudden the data is used by another company and it'll no doubt get moved to some, at some stage, possibly some other servers that they don't quite care so much. And, it's true of everything. And we've been going through a number of bureaucratic processes online where just the level of ineptitude of the coding. I may have told this story the last time, but one of my daughters was going through an NHS application, I think it was, and a whole list of questions, yes/no questions, the first 20 of which were checkboxes of yes or no. And then all of a sudden, 20 or 30 questions in, it changes to a drop-down for yes and no. And I'm thinking, what went through your head? Did you not notice? Did you just copy and paste a bit of stray code from somewhere else and couldn't be bothered changing it or fixing it? And you think, if they can't even get that right, what other back end,
How little companies understand about security and data management is crazy, especially considering that the amount of hostile behavior that we have online these days is significant.
I mean, that's the work, but my wife's been doing, trying to educate people about this stuff, and of course I get to hear some pretty scary stories of what's going on.
Yeah. So that's, but at the same time, there is today technology that can help you keep things reasonably safe. So I think that for my DNA to test to do my own DNA analysis, I'm just waiting for somebody to find some security enough encrypted system to manage their information, to make sure who can see that, who cannot see that, and.
Well, we've been waiting 20 years or so, haven't we? I mean, I remember these conversations way back about brokers and middlemen and platforms that manage exposure of data.
I guess that probably the new thing is that you don't need middlemen anymore. The fact that you can have end-to-end encrypted messages without anybody in the middle doing it for you, which simplifies the problem to some degree. I mean, it's a harder problem to solve, but because we have much more powerful devices at both ends, now you can handle it. But also things like the type of privacy that Apple and other companies have been implemented, so that more and more information never leaves your device, even if some meta information about the device is leaving your phone. So you can basically have both the advantages of huge centralized data sets that you can use to train new form of artificial intelligence, but at the same time the security, the safety of the fact that your information has never left. Only those little bits of information that were needed to train these machines were actually used. And there are some very, very interesting development in this space, which I think that the real challenge is that they will become mainstream when very large companies providing services to a very large group of people who do not understand anything about this will just deploy them in the same way. To be fair, even if you look at the efforts that Google and Facebook are carrying forward in terms of implementing secure end-to-end encryption on their communications, I mean, there are pretty strong forces in government that are opposing that.
Oh yeah. Well, and which government? Which we've touched on so many times before, and that perspective of the ideology of algorithms, who's deciding. I mean, even just in terms of what data, even pseudonymized or anonymized or whatever, coming off your phone, who decides what level that operates at? It's is it everything, or is it just some things, or different degrees depending on the bits of information? It's just going to get really interesting, and people are, going to struggle to keep up with it, as you said.
But I think that the only way out of this is the fact that people will not need to care. I mean, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. Does 99% of WhatsApp user care? No, they don't. But it is. And the fact that it is encrypted and that message is encrypted and Signal is encrypted and a whole bunch of other services are end-to-end encrypted in a very safe way. It's just a way technologies, because somebody has decided that this is better for users. Now, this might not be the best option for law enforcement agencies. This might not be the best option for government. The same government that happened to have a camera in their own office and didn't know about it.
Or that left very highly secure naval documents in a pile of papers at a bus stop.
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't you like that content to be encrypted?
Yeah. But at the same time, I wouldn't want... It's the balance, as always, isn't it, between the risks and the opportunities. And it would be such a shame if we constrained the possibilities with possibly ill-founded fears about the downsides. And I suppose it's the scale of the downsides as well. What percentage of the population does it affect? It's a bit like the thing about DRM. DRM just hurts the people who are trying to do the right thing, and the bad guys who want to make copies of stuff just walk past it.
Yes, but again, it was a big issue at the beginning of the story where literally you had somebody trying to copy somebody. I mean, have you thought about DRM in the last few years? I mean, not really anymore.
Yes, because I got sent a DVD of a talk from the States that was US encoded. And I thought for a moment before I used Handbrake to rip a copy, would it work? And it did. So yes.
Yeah, but it's still a bit of a niche case, right? I mean, it used to be that my God, I'm downloaded. Can I play this music? Can I not play this music? And Napster and formats and stuff. And these days, I don't. Is the music I'm listening does it have a DRM? Probably, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm annoyed at the fact that when I go to Italy, I cannot keep watching the shows on Netflix that are available here just because they have to split between markets in order to manage rights and stuff. And
iCloud Plus won't help you with that. Yep.
But
yeah, VPNs aren't dead yet.
No, exactly. But it's becoming less and less important. I mean, there was a time where I only had DVDs, and I had American DVDs and European DVDs, and it was always a struggle on how do you watch them, and I think it's becoming less important. In the same,
never mind NTSC and PAL.
Yeah, exactly. And I had VHS tape recorder that could play back in TSC.
Fantastic.
Which was a huge thing. So I could buy shitty, but the horrible American
the color
quality.
was horrible. Yeah.
Well, NTSC stands for never the same color. You know that, right?
No, I didn't, but it's so true.
So I think that probably the same will happen with encryption. That we still are in a moment where there are people that are concerned about this, and is it compatible, and is open, is closed, can you see it, can you not see it? But then we just the best technology or the problem.
You just mentioned VHS.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Beta was better, but NHS became the most popular technology. But I wonder if the best technology is not necessarily the technology that has a higher quality, but it has the technology that is the best intersection. Between
quality is just one parameter of many that you might use to judge best. Yeah. Well, it's a bit like the home stuff, isn't it? This new pact between the various players that is moving towards a standard so that they'll all interoperate. All the smart stuff in the smart homes is a great move. And it's going to be interesting how that turns out, because one of the strengths of Apple's HomeKit stuff was the security, because the Internet of Things is a minefield of potential security loopholes. So that's another can of worms that's not quite closed yet.
No, but it is. We're moving in the right direction. So it's if there was a concern about do I get on the Alexa train or the Google one or the Apple one, these days it's probably becoming less and less important, which is good. Yeah. And it's part of the natural evolution of technology. I think that probably a lesson to learn is not to become too overexcited about one camp or the other when a new thing comes out, because at this point I think we should have learned that eventually it all kind of melts in a much more, probably less exciting but more reliable technology.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, just watching the press or the stories about Windows 11 and the Microsoft CEO talking very sensibly about their position and their role and the way people's lives are changing and the need to interoperate better with other operating systems and things, which you'd never have heard somebody from Microsoft saying 10 years ago, is also interesting as well. Just the way the market for technology is shifting and the power shifting towards the consumer, and the expectation that stuff will just join up and work, which has in the past given Apple an advantage. But it's interesting just watching the other players beginning to shift in that direction as well.
Yeah, I think that there is a convergence in the technology space in every, even in more of a professional space. There was a time when if you had to get any two systems to interoperate or to exchange data, that was whole huge integration companies were formed just to get computers to talk to each other. And these days, pretty much anyone you meet, whatever technology they're using, whatever language they're using, whatever platform they're using, it's easy to get things to talk to each other. So that
you don't meet some of the people I meet, Paolo.
No, I'm lucky enough to not. Well,
I think in the startup world, in people who are developing new stuff, and certainly in a web environment, that's increasingly true. But I think for a lot of people at the NHS and others, there's still massive amounts of work to get stuff to join up.
I do get in touch with some people working in corporate environments through clients every once in a while, and it's, yes, you're right. They're stuck in the 80s, but I mean, I think that if you look at consumer technology and the most popular technology is popular in terms of number of people using it, there is a convergence, and I think it's exciting. I mean, I watched the stuff about Windows, and I would like to try to use
I know.
Windows computer. I mean, and every time I do that, I end up being disappointed. So but I honestly hope that it works well.
I've had to grapple with Windows 10 to help Penny, and it's just, it's the small things that drive Apple users nuts. The lack of care for the user experience and the inconsistencies in the design are still smacking you in the face every time you try to do something. But they're clearly heading, that's why I mentioned it. I think they're definitely heading in the right direction.
I mean, I've seen the demos of all their new stuff. It's very clever, smart stuff. There is a whole bunch of things that I wish I had on macOS, and there are other things that had been around on macOS for a while.
It's a bit like somebody once said about religions. They're only nice when they don't have power. It's maybe what happens when Windows gets knocked off its perch to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder. I mean, unfortunately, for some time, it was easy to run Windows and macOS on the same device. Now it's less easy, but we'll get there eventually. I mean, I think that we might literally get to the point where, you switch operating systems just like you can switch apps. I mean, I have many applications that do design and graphic stuff, and I switch between applications based on the one I prefer to do the specific job I had in mind. Sometimes you just go from one to the other just to keep doing what you want to do in the best possible environment. I don't see why eventually, if you think about it, more and more of the data that we manage is in the cloud, and at this point,
so it's only taken us 40 years, but we're getting back to dumb terminals and mainframes, aren't we?
Well, I think that we have smart terminal. It's just that the data that they're managing is not local. There was this odd thing that it's like self-evident, but I've never really considered it. I recently, I've been using for about a year, I think, Fantastical as a calendar instead of the regular macOS calendar.
That's another reason why I don't trust tech pundits. Everybody goes on and on about Fantastical. I just can't. It's just awful bit of software.
I actually like it. I find it, especially because I'm juggling a lot of different calendars and lots of different accounts. It has a number of features that I really like. And but what I never realized is that there is absolutely no reason why you can't use both calendars at the same time.
Totally.
Because calendars are in any case reading and writing from the same data. Exactly. So I recently started using, from the same company that does Fantastical, they have a contact management little app, and it comes free with the Fantastical subscription. And of course, even the address book is the same address book. It's cloud-based, and you can have any number of apps reading and writing from the same database. And again, for some reason, I mean, even if, of course, it's a database, I can actually access the same data from my phone, from my computer, from my iPad. But for some reason, to me, that data was binded to a specific app. While I know perfectly well that actually has been a standard forever, that any calendaring or contact management application.
Well, not forever. Can you remember when we used to have to try and manhandle contacts out of a phone into a computer? It was horrendous. And it was all mangled and came out long.
But let's say for the last 20 years, the thing has been working okay. So it's we need to keep going in direction. We need to keep having open standards that allow us to distribute, to share content across multiple types of editors, and then let everybody choose their editor. At some point, the operating system will just become an underlying layer for your favorite applications that will work with your data. It doesn't matter where the data is.
But it does matter in the sense that we started the whole conversation with. Because as you said that my data is in the cloud so I can access it with different applications and different devices, that's sort of contradictory to on-device processing. I know it's not the same thing, but it is that blurred line of where the stuff is and who's doing what with it still.
Well, I guess the point being there is if the encryption keys for that data only exist on my device, then the data can be anywhere. The important thing is that this data is properly encrypted, which, to be honest, in the case of my calendar information, I'm not sure it is. Probably not. I mean, there are some level encryptions, but there isn't any key management tool that I actually authorize. So I'm not sure. But if there is, it's so well done that I'm not even aware that it's there, which would be the perfect thing.
It's interesting talking about contacts and just thinking about how much spam I get purporting to come from people in my network. And it's clearly somebody's just scraped, I don't know, LinkedIn or Facebook, to get a bunch of first names and last names that they know are related to me and then slap them on top of dodgy emails. And made me think about some phishing text messages that I got recently that were, they're increasingly, some of them are just really, really stupid. For some reason, somebody called Moses keeps trying to sell me ball joints, which I'm not falling for because my balls are fine, thanks. But
you should answer that. I mean, at this point.
But I know. I smell a rat when I see it. A lot of people don't, and that's another aspect of data and trust and who's got the data. And it looks like somebody's emailing you because that's their name and you know them and you trust it. Well, no, it's not them. It's just 2 bits of data that somebody's lifted off LinkedIn. Yeah.
It's a dangerous world, people. Be careful.
Stay away from the internet. Don't listen to podcasts. Against everything.
And get vaccinated. You'll get 5G much, much better. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
See you next time.
Good luck.